In today's episode of Art of Making, we will visit the workshop of Renat Abdulov and find out what kind of craft he is engaged in. The multifaceted work of Bulbul Marden. Ainur Jazylbekova and her point of view on modern jewelry. Today we will learn how to make tooling leather products. The craftsman Renat Abdulov, who has been creating leather products in the national style for more than 5 years, will be our guide. Two years ago, he opened his own workshop. That's where we went to see the whole technological process. Now the master is busy. Perhaps the most time-consuming and difficult stage is the application of tooling in the form of Kazakh ornament manually. But first, of course, you need to choose the right material.
Есть основные два вида. Это кожа хромового дубления и кожа растительного дубления.
There are two types of leather, chroming and vegetable tanning. When using the first type, chemical components are used, and for the second type, only plant substances are used. This leather comes in the form of a semi-finished product. It's flexible, it has all the necessary properties to make such products and perform tooling technique and etc. Renat makes all his products in the national style, whether it's a wallet, a bag, a belt, a purse, or a case of business cards. All this is often called souvenirs, although these things can be used in everyday life. They're durable, they can be used for a long time, and national, ethnic motifs are always in trend. So we completed the process of tooling. The next stage is painting. We're using a special paint for that. It's an antique. It has different components and gives the drawing an additional texture. I usually apply it with a sponge. It's optional. It can be a piece of wool or a piece of some kind of fabric. But I have a sponge. The places that we tooled are deeper, and this paint gives it a dark shade. Relief parts remain slightly lighter. Once the craftsman himself was inspired by an incredible relief pattern on a leather product. It struck him so much that soon he himself became interested in this art. From childhood, I was drawn to creativity. I painted a lot. I saw an impressive leather product for the first time 10 years ago. It was a panel made of a piece of leather. The master himself completely processed the skin, while he made a raw material from pieces of leather that he could use later. Here it turned out to be a panel. It looked like a picture depicting a national game, Audaraspach, or wrestling. It had such a voluminous appearance, such a relief, and I was very much impressed. Later, the craftsman got an amazingly beautiful family relic in his hands. The shoes were made by hand in 1890. They were specially made for my relative's grandmother. I mean, it was not in the last century, but the one before the last. Shoes are completely made of leather and metal. Brass was used here. But the nails were wooden. The shoes still look like new shoes today. Their durability is amazing. The craftsman hopes that his work will serve their owners for more than a decade. We applied the paint. At the next stage, we apply oil, which will make the leather more elastic.
Then,
when the paint dries, we close it with a special means called the finish. We use the finish in order to protect the leather from moisture and preserve the created pattern. Then we cut out the details of the future product and begin to assemble. We usually stitch by hand, since the manual and machine seams are different.
Ручной шов, он таким образом прошивается, что в одно отверстие навстречу друг другу.
A hand seam with a needle is sewn several times into one hole, so such a seam is more durable. It's made with special smooth yarn.
Прошивается специальными нитками вощенными. Допустим, если в будущем при носке этого изделия, если где-то
Let's say if the thread will be torn once you start using the product, then in general the whole product will remain intact, since the other thread will hold the seam.
Так как другая нить будет держать шов, изделие почти готово, осталось.
The product is almost ready. The only thing left is to process the edges. The unique leather techniques that our ancestors used has survived to this day, thanks to such craftsmen as Renat.
Ну вот, мы закончили изделие.
Well, we finished the product. We have such a coin purse with a national ornament. Creativity is my life, says the hero of our story. Today we met with a high-class master and a very interesting person. Please welcome Bulbul Marden.
Бала кезіміз ауылда өскендіктен, ауылдағы қазақ халқының салт дәстүріне байланысты.
By tradition, like many other girls, I grew up with love to needlework since childhood.
Біріншіде анамыз осы қолданбалы қол өнерден бастап үйретеді ғой.
My mother started teaching me how to make a camel wool shawl. I liked it.
Өзіне шәл тоқуды.
And then I myself began to study something new.
Менің тоқымаға, қол өнерге деген қызығушылығым артты. О кездегі еңбек пәнінің мұғалімі әртүрлі тоқыма тоқу.
For example, at school I learned to knit and embroid.
Еңбек сабағынан үйретіп, сол тоқуды кестелі.
So the needlework became the meaning of my life.
Өмірлік азығым болды деуге болады. Қолданбалы қол өнердің түрлері сан алуан ғой.
We can say that needlework is limitless. Our ancestors managed to decorate their dwelling to provide themselves with clothes due to the fact that they were engaged in needlework.
Киім кешегісінде ас ауқатында жасап келген. Сондықтан қолданбалы қол өнер.
And animal husbandry provided them with the raw materials they needed. I would call needlework a spiritual wealth.
Жан-жақты өнер деп өзім бағалаймын. Бізгесте деген бар. Бізгесте жәнегі
Here's the biskiste. It used to decorate the household items, warriors' clothes, and bedding.
арқылы жәнегі әшекейлеп сәндеп отырған. Қазіргі заманда болса бізгесте ұмыт кетіп барады.
Now biskiste is almost forgotten. It was replaced by the embroidery machine.
Қолға алынып отыр. Қол өнердің ішіндегі ең маңыздысы
A special place in our story is given to carpet weaving.
адамның логикасы даму керек.
To weave carpets, the craftsman must have logic, mathematical thinking.
Алаша тоқу үшін ең маңыздысы құру.
Before you start weaving, you need to decide on the size of the carpet and correctly calculate the right number of threads.
3 қазықты жерге қағасың. Өзімнің шәкірттеріме осы алашаны
I teach all this to my students.
оны қалай
The whole process from spinning to staining.
бәрін үйретіп, бір шама жолға қойылды.
Today, few people are engaged in carpet weaving, not like at the time of our ancestors. However, Bulbul Marden is familiar with both ancient and modern technologies.
Алаша тоқу үшін біріншіде жәнегі қойдың өлі жүнін таңдау.
To weave alasha, first of all, you need to take high-quality wool and wash it, paint it, then twist it in threads. Only then weaving begins. There are a lot of techniques. You need a weaving machine. It can be made at home. 3 thin planks are needed. We join them together, forming the shape of a triangle. The size of the carpet also depends on the size of the machine. Using threads of different colors, alternating them, you can create a bright product.
Тұрмысқа қажетті бұйымдарды жасап келді ғой.
Not only the color palette and patterns are very important for Bulbul. Each product has a certain meaning or purpose.
Көбінде мен жұмысты әртүрлі түстермен жасаймын.
In my works, you can see the entire palette. But when choosing color, I rely on the harmonious combination.
Қай-қай түсте, бірақ та түстің үйлесімділігі болу керек. Түстің үйлесімділігі.
After all, this is very important for the aesthetic perception of the final product.
Эстетикалық талғамға сай шыға қоймайды.
Patterns and their sizes depend on the size of the future carpet.
қазақ халқы ою-өрнек жәнегі тағы да мал шаруашылығына кайып тіреледі. Қошқар мүйіз, түйе табан, құс мұрын.
Since Kazakhs were livestock breeders, the patterns were very often animalistic. Lamb horn, camel trace, and bird's beak.
Қандай ою-өрнек салу керек. Қыздың сәукелесіне, мешбетіне қандай, сырмаққа қандай.
It should be noted that patterns intended for headgear or clothing have never been applied to carpets.
Өнерге де жан-жақты ғылыми тұрғыда дәлелденген ғой барлығы.
Folk craft is the spiritual heritage that we got from our ancestors. Therefore, it's very important in the age of technological progress to preserve, pass on this knowledge to a new generation, says Bulbul.
Қолөнер деген
For 40 years, I've been a teacher of the subject technology. Several students followed in my footsteps, and someone seriously engaged in carpet weaving. Needlework is a wide-range work which helps you to learn a lot.
игеруге болады. Қазіргі жастар
Creativity is a work that teaches patience, perseverance, and frugality.
ұрпаққа үйрететіндей талпынса екесіңдер деп
I hope that the younger generation will retain our national artisan culture.
сәндік қолданбалы қолөнеріміз дами берсін дегім келеді.
Kazakhstan designer and creator of unique handmade accessories Ainur Jazylbekova is oil and gas engineer by training. While her fellow classmates were studying strength of material, Ainur was drawn into a more creative sphere.
Рукоделие было моим хобби.
Needlework was my hobby. I consciously made a choice, and so I started doing something that I enjoyed.
Начала заниматься тем, что мне по душе.
Curiosity, the desire to make beautiful things, and the love of manual work brought me to jewelry design. Jewelry is like a kind of magic, says the designer.
Сперва зарождается идея, затем...
At first, I come up with an idea, then I transfer it to paper.
Конечно, бывают иногда такие порывы.
There are such impulses of creativity when I am inspired. I start immediately to work and create.
Подбираю материалы необходимые.
I select the necessary materials and create products.
Это в изделие. Вдохновение я черпаю с разных источников.
I draw inspiration from various sources. If I combine colors, then I, of course, look at the colors of nature. I like art and fashion. Inspiration can come during the process, in different ways.
Вдохновение может прийти и в процессе работы. По-разному бывает. Я работаю в различных техниках. Работала вышивальной техникой.
I work in various techniques. I work with embroidery equipment, in complex soutache equipment. Various materials are used here: embroidery, decoration with natural stones and beads, glass, and work with leather. In fact, it's a tremendous experience. I could experiment with various materials.
Я могла экспериментировать с различными материалами.
Now I work in the assembly technology.
Создаю минималистичные украшения.
I create minimalistic jewelry, and I really like working with pearls.
Каждый камень имеет свои свойства, свое значение.
Each stone has its own property, its own meaning, its own power and energy, and definitely stones have certain properties.
Обладает своими свойствами определенными. Например, жемчуг развивает женскую энергию.
For example, pearls develop female energy, intuition, and self-confidence. I really like pearls.
К себе. Вот. Мне очень нравится этот материал жемчуг. Каждое украшение является уникальным.
Each jewelry is unique as it embodies an idea.
Воплощение идеи. И я пришла не просто так.
I came to my favorite business for a reason, and now I'm creating all the products with love.
С любовью. Но я думаю, что история продолжается, когда
And each of them has its own story. It begins when the girl finds her jewelry and puts it on.
начинает одевать их, тогда уже начинается история.
Our jewelry reminds its owners about their uniqueness as Ainur. So, who is she, the woman who wears this jewelry?
Это женщина, которая гармонична. Она красива внутри.
This woman is harmonious.
Она уверена.
She's beautiful both inside and out.
Она
She's confident, modern, feels the time she lives in.
шагает в ногу со временем.
And of course, she realizes her uniqueness.
Она хочет подчеркнуть свою уникальность.
In the jewelry industry, there is quite a high competition. It's necessary to constantly track fashion trends. One thing always remains unchanged. You can work on creating jewelry only by investing part of your soul.
Да, действительно, сейчас украшение – это тренд.
Indeed, now jewelry is a trend, and jewelry brightly accentuates the overall image.
Я думаю, это связано с тем, что женщины
I think this is due to the fact that women began to appreciate themselves more. They started to discover more about themselves.
узнавать себя, раскрывать. И сейчас
Now they choose such things that emphasize their uniqueness.
какие-то акцентные вещи в нарядах, что подчеркивает уникальность женщины.
And jewelry helps to express oneself in different images.
Акцентом, помогает выразить себя в образах.
Trends are changing so quickly now, so it's better to develop your own special style, says Ainur.
Дизайнеры и художники – это те люди, которые создают тренд, а не гонятся за ним.
I think designers and artists are the ones who dictate the trends, not the ones who chase it.
Они предугадывают тренды.
They have a unique gift, intuition, which allows them to predict trends and look ahead.
Могут формировать эти тренды, они могут смотреть вперед.
The designer also advises not to follow fashion, but to feel it.
Я нахожусь в постоянном поиске.
I'm in a constant search. I experiment with various materials,
Меняю направление.
change directions, and now I am in a search.
Я нахожусь сейчас в поиске. Я думаю, что никогда из моды не выйдет это
I think that inner beauty will never come out of fashion,
доброта.
as well as such qualities as kindness, decency, and honesty.
Я думаю, что это никогда не выйдет из моды.